Hey YouTube, welcome to the channel. We have a good one for you today. A rusty F150. Stay tuned. Let's see underneath here. See this rust. Let's see if we can see on this exhaust manifold on the driver's side. You can see this crack. Let's see if I can get this camera up here with the light. Zoom in. Well, you can see the crack pretty good from here anyway. There's a good crack. Rusty and crusty it all is. Yes, everything's rusty on this truck. We don't have this down here in the South. Not to that extent. You can somewhat see that manifold over here on the passenger side. It's exactly the same. Holes in the frame. She's terrible. She's terrible. Okay guys, here's what we're doing. We're actually going to be doing exhaust manifolds on this truck. All the bolts are solid rust. Normally what you can do is jack the engine up, take the motor mounts loose, jack the engine up, then you can get straight to the bolts. Well, since this truck is so rusty, it's a guaranteed fact all those bolts are going to break, all the studs. So instead of going that route, we're just going to pull the engine. There are a couple other things we do have to do to the engine while it is out, so do it all at once. So first thing you want to do, this truck is a four-wheel drive, so we went ahead and took the skid plate off underneath. We went ahead and got the exhaust manifold bolts loose for the exhaust pipe. Got those loose. Get your battery all undone. Several things do have to come off. Fan shroud, get that off. Battery loose, get the computer out of the way. You do need to discharge the AC, so do that like you're supposed to. Several things, you got to get the intake manifold off. I'm not going to go through all the steps. You know, if you're going to be going into something this far, you know, you should have somewhat of an idea on how to do it. So yeah, we're going to get started. All right, let's see where we're at so far. Next thing you had to do, take out the radiator. For sure, take out the radiator. Now on these Fords, I believe they started in early 2000 to mid 2000s, is the transmission lines. All right, those you'll have a little bit of trouble with if you don't have the correct tool. It's similar to like a fuel line disconnect. Most of them I've seen, they're like a reddish color or like a maroon color fitting. So you'll have to take those out. And next thing, we're going to get this power steering pump pulley off. That's your next thing to do. This truck's rusty, so we're probably going to have a time with that. But get the power steering pump pulley off, get the pressure line loose for the power steering pump, and then unbolt the power steering pump. That's your next course of action. Okay, we're ready to take the intake off. Now what you have with the intake, like I said, you have to remove the throttle body from the top, so it has room between the upper intake and the cowl. You also have to remove part of the PCV nipple. You have two 8mm bolts for that. Two things you need to watch out for when you pull the intake off. You have the intake manifold runner actuator. It's on the back of the intake. You have a connector you have to take loose, and also See in the back. See if I can get you back here. You might be able to see it. Yeah, see, that's the actual intake runner actuator. Then you have a wiring harness that's going to run right behind that. That's going to connect. You have a 10mm bolt that's going to hold the harness onto the back of the intake. That will need to come off also. Somebody's already had this off at some point, so that's actually not connected. So all we got to do is take the intake off. So let's see what we got. You just lift it up in the front, pivot it towards the front of the engine.
Both back corners have to lift up a little.
And then she comes right out. Just like this. I'll set it right over here for now. Now you will have a little bit of gas spillage coming out of the fuel rail. So this is what you're left with the intake off.
That's the connector that's got to come loose.
That's the connector that runs to the actuator. This is the wiring harness, or actually this is the wiring harness that connects to the back of the intake with the 10mm bolt. And that is one thing I did not mention that's on the rear of the intake, a vacuum line, but that one there just pops loose. So that's the only thing that's still on the back. So, next thing you'll have to be doing is disconnect any of the wiring that you need to, you know, from the ignition coils, various sensors on the front of the engine, everything under the bottom. So that's what we're going to do next. Raise the truck up and get started on the bottom half. Alrighty, now we're down under the truck. Next thing you're going to want to start working on, you need to get your starter off, get the wiring off for the solenoid, get the starter off the truck. Also, you can go ahead and get the AC compressor loose. You should have 3 bolts for the pump to get that off. It's up to you if you want to disconnect the lines. You really don't have to take the compressor all the way off the truck, but that's just what we're going to do. Save some space. Get the compressor off, get the starter off, then you can start working on other things. Okay, everybody, here's where we are now. Ran into a little bit of a problem with all the rust. The lower motor mount studs on the passenger side, those are studs that come down through the frame. Those nuts came off. Nope, well, somewhat of a problem, but they came off. Alright, so those are good. The driver's side, on the other hand, has become a big issue. Alright, on the driver's side, right above, if yours is 4-wheel drive, you'll have the differential in the front. Alright, that large bolt right here, that is the bolt for the motor mount that goes through the mount and holds it onto the frame. That, on the front side, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. On the front side, bear with me. Yeah, right. It's going to be tough. Right on the edge of my finger, that's where the bolt comes through. There's a capture nut that's welded into a cage. It's not welded, it's inside of a cage, so to speak, that the bolt goes through. That's all rusted and it is broken away. So we can't get the motor mount bolt out that way. So what we've had to resort to, unfortunately, is taking the front differential down. We've got the CV axles loose. You have 6 bolts for each CV axle, bolted to the flange. Once you get that down, of course, you have the front drive shaft you have to take loose from the yoke. That has 4 bolts. Those are 12mm, 12 points. Alright, then on the passenger side, you're going to have this mount. That bolt you have to take loose for the front differential. Let's see here what we have. Have another one in the front. Let's see. There's a bolt up that direction you have to take loose. And another bolt you're going to have to take loose. That way we'll get the front differential down. Okay, everybody, here's where we are after, I believe, it took, with all the rust on this truck, it took about 3 hours. 3 hours. It should have took a lot less to get this front differential down. These are the 3 mounting points. Obviously this is the front, to face the front of the truck. You have this upper mount. That one was, it wasn't too bad, but it wasn't easy. That's the rear mount. And this one is the one that's on the passenger side. The bushing in that's pretty bad, but that one was the most difficult by far to get out. Now up here, this is on the passenger side of the truck. That's where the CV axle is. That's the passenger side mount for the differential. It's the driver's side, CV axle. That is the upper mount for it, and that is the rear mount for it. Now, the reason why, I'll explain to you that now. The reason why we had to take that out is this is the driver's side motor mount bolt. Take it loose from the rear. This is that capture cage. All the rust, it is all broken loose here. So the nut moves around, and whenever you try to put torque on it, it just spins. Okay. There was no way to access this in the truck, or with the differential in place. No way whatsoever. So, at this point, what we're gonna do is we're gonna weld the nut. Let's see here, let me get your light in place. Okay. We're gonna run a fat bead of weld on this side of the nut and weld it to the frame. And the same thing on the opposite side of the nut. I'm sure, yeah, we could cut the cage off and weld on a completely new nut, but at this point we're just trying to do something that does work and will work, or at least it should. This is trial and error. So that's where we are right now. We'll be back once we get this taken care of. Okay guys, where we're at now, we have the torque converter bolts taken loose. That's the next step we want to do. Now on these, on the Fords, you have a plug, a rubber plug that's up here in this area. It's on the left side of the engine. That's where you can access the torque converter bolts. They're actually nuts, there's 4 of them. So once you get those off, then you can start on the bell housing bolts. There's a few, I don't know how many right off by hand, but they're 13 millimeter all the way around. Get those off, and then we'll move forward. Okay guys, we're ready to pull the engine out. They do make a bracket, a hoisting bracket that attaches in the valley of the engine block. It attaches at the front, 2 bolts for the alternator, and they're actually the rear upper bell housing bolts. So if you want to use the lifting bracket, that's totally up to your discretion. So anyway, the upper 2 bell housing bolts you can get from the top. That's if you're just pulling the engine out. Okay. Those are up in that direction. You can actually get them from under the hood up top. Now if you were just pulling the transmission out of the truck, doing a replacement like that, then you could just lower the cross member for the transmission to get to those 2 bolts. But the rest of the bell housing bolts you get from the bottom. So here's where we are, right, we're just about ready to pull the engine out, and then we actually get to the job that we were here to do to begin with, which is the exhaust manifolds. So stay tuned. Okay guys, if you stuck with us this long, then you know that we've got to the job at hand. The exhaust manifolds. They are terrible. Rusty, crusty. You can see where that has been leaking. This is the passenger side. You can see where it had been leaking. You see all the black carbon. Okay. So, there's different ways you can get these off. What we're going to do, we're actually going to cut the studs off. Going to cut the studs off so we can get the manifolds off the heads. Terrible. that bolt was actually broken already. It was missing. That's one reason why it was leaking on the rear. So we're going to cut the studs off to get the manifolds off the head, and then we're going to weld nuts on to the remaining part of the stud and hopefully back them out. That's the game plan. Like I say, there are other ways to do it, but this is the route we're going to take. So let's take a look at the opposite side. The driver's side, it's just the same. There's a large crack in the top of the manifold. Yeah, we don't have stuff quite this bad down south. Thankfully, this truck is actually from New Jersey. So that's what we're going to do. We're also going to be replacing the dipstick tube because it's totally rotted out. And a few other odds and ends that the customer wants to do. But here we go. Let's get this off. There we go. Okay, here's what we got. Got the manifold off. Like I said, we just cut the studs. There's 1, 2, 3 of the studs broke off inside the head, down below the surface. So that's going to be pretty aggravating, but we'll see what happens. So what we're going to do is we're going to use just some standard nuts that should fit over the studs. That really won't, but we can make that work if we have to. Because what's really going to do the job is the heat of the weld. So we're going to lay it on pretty hot and thick, and we're just going to see what happens. So on these, it's where it's we didn't cut them off flush. I'm just going to hold it up here with a pair of pliers, similar to this fashion. Hold it up there and weld it. So let me grab a brush and I'm going to clean the block just a little bit. Just give it a little scrub so we have a decent surface for it to weld to. And since the heads are aluminum, the weld's not going to stick to the head. Now we will get a little bit of slag that we'll just have to clean off, but that's not, it's going to come right off. Now, one thing we will do is put some rags inside the exhaust ports just to save that. So we'll do that now. Get this cleaned up a little more. Yeah, you can really see on this side where it had been leaking for a good while, leaking out the exhaust. Mainly from that broken stud. Hopefully the heat won't get to these too bad. I'll tell you what we might have to do. I'm going to use some blue shop towels. Those might do a little better. Very much. Actually, these will work pretty good. Okay. Follow them up, stuff them inside. Nothing technical. Just so slag doesn't get inside. Okay. Okie doke. All right. Let's see what happens. Let me flip that switch on the back of the welder. Just using a, it's actually a flux core MIG welder. That's all you need. Just put your grounding clamp somewhere on the block. On this is pretty rusty everywhere you go. So.
And he is using a welding hood. He's not looking at it.
Yeah, that wouldn't be too smart. There are idiots out there. Okay. To start off with, let's just try this one. Let's see what we got. Up here to it. Start filling it in. That's a bad ground. Let's move to a different ground. There we go. Yeah, we're gonna find a better ground than that. Let's see. Let's try back here. Try to get on there as straight as possible. Let that cool for a second. We'll hit it again. And there's got to be a lot of that heat transfer should break it loose. So it filled up a lot. Let's try it again. Cool down again. She's hot.
Definitely.
Now what you could do, spray it with a little water, help it cool down quick. Yeah, it's already cooled down a little bit. Let's just try it and just see how this bolt comes. No, not yet. Not yet. Not yet. Let's try it again. she goes. Now, could you have done this in the truck? I doubt it. Not one. I mean, it depends on where it's located. You know, since you have the strut tower that's in the way. There she is. You can see that on camera.
Back up this there.
Unfocused just a little bit.
Can you see it?
Yeah. That's one. Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate how to take out a stud that's broken down below the surface of the head. We'll clean that up. Still may be a little difficult to get to start welding to begin with, but grab a nut. Okay. So what I'm going to do first. Get that past it. Maybe that'll work. I don't know. Hopefully.
That's not in the way right there.
Okay. Alright, what we're going to do first, I'm just going to fill this in a little bit. Okay, fill it in just a little bit. Take the nut. That way it kind of has something to center itself with. I mean, that's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. So get that over it.
I think that one was slagging at the beginning.
No, I don't believe it is. And weld it. Spray it coat down. It's not pretty, ladies and gentlemen, but I do not weld for a living. Alright, we'll heat it up a little more. As long as you get a decent weld inside, and I've said it before, it's the heat. Mostly, it helps these studs come out. Welding the nut on just gives you something to back it out with. Right. Okay, let's give her a go. That slag on the bolt, on the nut. Okay, let's try it. And she's coming right out.
Just like you said she would.
Yeah, I did not have that centered, but it still worked. Not centered at all.
Well, one thing, I'd pick that over drilling it out any day.
You got that right. About there. We're about there. Trying to do this in the truck would be terrible.
Pert near impossible.
Okay, there she is. Let me get close up. Maybe you can get a. Let's see. Maybe I'll zoom in. Come on, focus on us. Focus, 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 focus. Focus. Not wanting to cooperate. It's trying. Yeah. She might not. She might not do it. Yeah, she won't do it. But guess what? You get the idea. Weld a nut onto the broken stud, and it comes out. So, continue on to finish up the rest of them. On this side of the truck, on the driver's side, we have quite a few. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6. 6 to take out on this side, and all of them on the driver's side. So get to work. Alrighty, this is what she's supposed to look like, or what it should look like, once you have all the studs removed out of the head. All you have to do now is just clean the surface. This is one of the new studs that I just screwed into place, you can see. So just clean the surface up, put your gaskets, studs, new manifolds. You'll be rocking and rolling. Start the next side. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.